Guys, I trust NordVPN with my internet security. They are seriously on a mission to keep you safe online. With their help, the internet can be free from cyber threats, censorship, and surveillance. I have learned so much about cybersecurity since I started using NordVPN. I was a Nord customer long before they sponsored the show, and I have had total control over my internet usage since. This is more than a VPN. NordVPN's threat protection shields you from malware, trackers, and ads, while their dark web monitor notifies you of any leaks of your credentials. NordVPN makes internet security easy and simple to understand. I love that they don't track or share what you do online, and your traffic is always protected. With 24/7 customer support and a 30-day money-back guarantee, NordVPN can't be beat. Become safer online with a single click and never stop with the fastest VPN on the planet. Get NordVPN's 2-year plan plus 4 months free when you go to nordvpn.com/Sonnen or just click on the link below. Ilia Topuria, I just haven't seen him miss yet, guys. I haven't seen this guy miss. Now, let me take you back, but I feel like my experience with Topuria is yours. I feel like you'll relate to this. Topuria is Mr. Water Bottle. This is the first time I know anything about Ilia Topuria. He gets into a dust-up with Paddy. They end up throwing bottles at each other like they never touched. They were across the room, and it was something verbal, and I don't know how Ilia got in the wheelhouse, but it was a big deal at the time. It was a big deal for a couple of reasons. First off, he got nicknamed Mr. Water Bottle. Now, as condescending as that is, I did not know what an Ilia Topuria was, but neither did you. And I remember I was sitting right here in this chair when this whole thing goes down, and my partner Ryan brings him up on Sherdog.com, and this is when we find out he's 12-0. Mr. Water Bottle had never lost. And all of a sudden, it was like the music stopped. We go, wait a minute. You got this dude that's 12-0 is getting to the mix with Paddy. And that was the big story on Paddy the Baddies. The UFC loves him, and he can cut a promo, and he's so fun, and he's so interesting, but don't put him with the guys that are 12-0. Now, I'm not telling you that that narrative has held up, by the way. Paddy came out and showed his worth, but I'm just talking about that time. So when we see this, in conjunction with the fact that they're different weight classes, it's a total miss. And it's a miss to a degree that, hey, Mr. Water Bottle, you'd better be careful. Because you are getting in the wheelhouse of a star. And a lot of the guys behind the scenes don't understand this, or they see it as a big opportunity. Now, I love it when they take it. I'm just sharing for you. You're playing with house money, and it can start to be very dangerous. Let me give you an example. There was a 135-pounder, tattoo on his neck. Allegedly was an MMA fighter with some pretty good hands. And he was one of Uriah Faber's coaches on The Ultimate Fighter. And he decided it was a good idea to get chest to chest with the star, Conor McGregor. Now, that dude who was allegedly a fighter and had a tattoo on his neck would have been out of that company so goddamn fast if he put a hand on McGregor. I mean, in the capacity that he could have hurt Conor, right? The only commodity that the fighter has is the performance. If you stop him from performing, you see the problem. And that guy was Cody Garbrandt. Now, this is Cody Garbrandt before he was Cody Garbrandt. I'm sure you guys would love to see Garbrandt versus McGregor now. I'm sharing with you at that time. And while that might be an extreme example, it's an example that you'll be able to relate to, and I am going to make the comparison. I understand that it's a step down, but I am going to make the comparison to when Ilia Topuria, Mr. Water Bottle, decided to get into it with Paddy Pimblett. So, all right, fine. Move the tape along. All of a sudden, there's some opportunity. All of a sudden, you start bringing in some real hammers, right? Josh Emmett's of the world. And Yuri Rodriguez's of the world, Alexander Volkanovski's of the world, and there was just never a miss. I've never seen Topuria get it wrong. And then once you start establishing him, you start knowing who he is. Like, he had a montage in a vignette series building up to his fight with Volkanovski, and everything about that felt like there was an upset coming, didn't it? And I know the odds makers, and I know Volk was ranked #1, and I know Volk was champion of the world. I remember the whole thing, but everything about it felt like, right, Volk was just coming off of a knockout. He had shared some of the mental side that was bothering him as to why he liked to be busy, but many people were saying, hey man, you were just knocked out, and it was up a weight class by this great big guy. Like, before you go pull the pounds off and go back down, you might want to put some space between it, but that's not what he wanted. And I just share for you, once he became champion, I'm talking about Topuria, but once he became champion, now what do? And to remind you of that time frame, okay, on Saturday night, Ilia Topuria shocks the featherweight world, becomes champion of the world, okay? 7 days later, Ortega versus Rodriguez Part 2 is scheduled. So nobody says a word, but everybody expects the winner of Ortega versus Rodriguez Part 2 to take that microphone and make themselves the #1 contender. And it didn't happen. In fact, Ortega spoke about it. He purposely did not do it. He wanted to show respect to Rodriguez in that moment and not brush him away. He wanted to let Topuria have his 15 minutes. But I do share that with you because now you've got an opening and you don't necessarily have a plan. I mean, that was the plan, right? Do you know the buildup that goes into that? Do you know what it's like to get two guys signed? You know what it's like to get them into a main event? You know what it's like to go out and have that main event carried out in front of a meaningful audience in a fight that turns out to be great? Like, do you know the things that go? That was the plan. So when that didn't happen, what do you do with Topuria? All right, great. So Topuria stays out there, though. Just enough. He's just enough. He doesn't brush Sean O'Malley off. He lets the headlines go. He lets the talk go. He gives just enough interviews. He shows up at 300. He gets a great seat. He takes in Max and Gaethje. And he didn't show a true vested interest. Because why should he? They're not fighting at his weight class. What's this got to do with him? But the cameras kept going to him, and he knew the cameras were coming to him. He's a handsome guy. This guy, he pops on camera. He makes little facial expressions, and the commentators will give a 2-minute diatribe on what one of Ilia Topuria's facial expressions meant. The guy, oh, he's great. Topuria is great. So, Max follows through with what he told everybody leading in to the BMF fight. That he's going to beat Justin Gaethje and he's going to go back down to 145. That this will make him a #1 contender. But forget about Islam. Going back to 45. Now, he has no grievance with Topuria. There is no beef there. Max has an issue with featherweight. He didn't want to leave that division and go win a belt somewhere else while having success elsewhere, looking as though he couldn't have success here at home. And I understand that. I just understand that. I was an 85-pounder. I moved it to 205 pounds, but it wasn't the same. It was as though you're fleeing. I get it. But Topuria tells him, you finally have something that I want. You now have a belt. Okay? So, if you're going to come down here, I'm going to put my belt up. You're going to do the same. The end. Or I'm going to turn to Ortega, who hasn't failed 3 times against the guy I just knocked down. Now, I'm paraphrasing there. I'm not quoting, but I'm damn close. And now it's Max's move. Max goes on Joe Rogan. And Max agrees to those terms. Now, guys, for the smart marks and the cheap seats, please don't think you need to correct me to let me know that that's not how this is done, right? That Topuria doesn't tell Max to put it up and Max doesn't agree and Joe Rogan makes the fight. I get it. But stay on the talking side of this, because that's all we're at. Stay on this narrative. This is interesting to me. And the question now, see, Topuria played this beautifully. He played it beautifully, and the payoff to the proof that he played it beautiful is he got his way. That is the empirical evidence to find out, right? Everything is hindsight. You make your move, and it's hindsight. Because Max went on the biggest program in the world to make the fight, oh, and by the way, agreed to his terms, means Topuria did it right. But I would like to see something different. See, I feel that the UFC and Dana White have a big problem. And that is the BMF got out of the box. I don't think they meant for it to. The BMF is coveted with the boys. I think you, the fans, are getting into it. I think we have proof that you, the fans, are getting into it. From the 2 times it was contested, right? First ever Madison Square Garden, absolute sellout, biggest star in Hollywood, leader of the free world. To the last time that it was contested at 300, which turned out to be the people's main event. I get the one in between in Salt Lake, and I'm just sharing for you that I think, and I'll only know one way. I'll only know one way, and if Max would do this for me. If Max would say, you know what, Ilia? You've got the 45-pound world championship, and you bring in Brian Ortega. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm coming home. I'm coming back to 45, but I'm going to put up my championship. And I, too, am going to offer it to Brian Ortega. So now Brian Ortega is going to choose publicly, and he is going to let the world know which of these 2 belts is more coveted, yours or mine. I'm coming home. I'm coming to 45, and I'm not coming to you. You invoked Ortega. I invoked the same. Stand back and let the chips fall. I would like that. I'm not going to get it. I would like that. Because you know what? I think the BMF belt wins.